welcome to Anime Recaps. In this video, we will explain Dragonar Academy. This anime tells the story of an Ansarivan Dragonar Academy student who is belittled by his friends because he doesn't have a dragon pal. But when his dragon pal finally appeared, he was recognized as the strongest Dragonar or dragon rider in the academy. How his journey began as Dragonar? Let's find out in Dragonar Academy. Dragonar Academy begins by showing a 16-year-old boy named Ash Blake, who finds himself in bed and unable to move. At the same time, an unknown voluptuous-looking woman with horns playfully teases Ash by nibbling almost every part of him. She introduces herself as Navi and says, "It's to entrust myself, who is about to be born." Navi then disappears as Ash wakes up from his dream. Ash, who did not understand the dream, then decided to go to school. He is a senior student at Ansarivan Dragonar Academy, the highest education institute of the Lautreamont Knightdom for dragon training and otherwise known as an academy city to the locals and students. Ash Blake is branded as the #1 problem child at the school due to his tendency to react violently to any perceived insult to his yet-to-be-born dragon pal. The Lautreamont Kingdom is on the Arcstrata continent. It is home to the Lautreamont royal family, while the kingdom houses most of the dragon population than the other kingdoms. Because of that, the existence of a dragon in that country is considered very special. It can even indicate the person's social status who owns a certain type of dragon. At school, students take dragon training. But before that, each of the students must make a contract with a dragon. The contract will be marked by the Seikoku that will appear on one of their body parts. The Seikoku is a symbol of several markings that resemble a dragon head. This symbol rests an infant dragon, which will eventually be born from the markings. Usually, one can only ride or control one's own dragon, known as the dragon pal. However, Ash can ride and control other people's dragons, even though he doesn't have his own dragon pal because he has an unusual talent called Chalice. Because the dragon race will soon be held, the students at Ansarivan Academy seem very enthusiastic and are actively practicing riding their dragons. The students there hope to be like Rebecca Randall, a senior student at the academy. She won the title of the Arch Dragonar, which means she has raised her dragon pal, Cuculain, to the level of Maestro, and her pal has become strong enough to create an arc or mystical armor and weapon for her. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Ash seems to be practicing dragon riding using his friend's dragon pal, a young man named Raymond Kirkland. Not long after, Ash accidentally gets himself into an argument with a girl named Silvia Lautreamont. Because Silvia mentioned Ash's dragon pal being probably dead, Ash, who was annoyed, then challenged Silvia in the annual Aries Dragonar Festival race and asked her to take back her word if he won the race. That night, Ash again dreams of Navi, who tells him that this is the last night they meet in a dream. But Ash again did not understand the meaning of his dream. A few days later, when the race finally took place, Ash borrowed Raymond's dragon pal, Bridget, so he could enter the race and defeat Silvia with her dragon pal Lancelot. At the start of the race, Silvia seemed to have a hard time when several students blocked her way. But then, Ash came with Bridget, who accidentally paved the way for them. Silvia flew her dragon in the air while Ash followed them on the ground. Ash, who finally lost track of Silvia, then decided to rest in the forest. He let Bridget rest while he walked the path leading to the middle of the forest, following a strange voice that sounded like it was calling out to him. At the end of the trail, Ash found the wreck of a military plane belonging to the Zephyros Kingdom. However, Ash was surprised by the appearance of a masked man named Milgauss, who was about to attack him. He thought that Milgauss was one of the soldiers of the Zephyros Kingdom. When Ash was preparing to attack Milgauss, suddenly a girl named Anya appeared who attacked Ash first. Ash and Anya engage in a fight until they are at the edge of a cliff. Ash swiftly saved Anya, who almost fell off the cliff, but she slyly swapped their positions, so he fell off the cliff. In a state of urgency and near death, the Seikoku in Ash's arms suddenly emitted light, and his dragon pal was finally born. However, instead of taking the form of a dragon, Ash's dragon pal turns out to be a beautiful girl who is very similar to Navi, who often appears in Ash's dreams. Not only that, Ash's dragon pal refuses to consider Ash as her master and instead treats him as though he was her servant, much to his annoyance. Long story short, Ash finally took the girl to his dorm room at Ansarivan Academy. However, the girl's presence there even panicked one of Ash's friends, a young man named Maximilian Russell, because Ash hid a girl without clothes in his room. On the other hand, Rebecca, a student council president, doesn't seem to mind the girl's presence because she is Ash's dragon pal. Rebecca then gave the girl a pair of school uniforms and told Ash that Professor Cornwell would investigate Ash's dragon pal. Ash then takes his dragon pal for a walk in town, where she seems to really like crepes and ice cream. But suddenly, she had a fever, and her face turned red. Ash thought that she was sick, then planned to treat her. But she instead did something to him that made everyone look at them with irritated eyes. Sylvia, who accidentally to be there, then came to them and immediately scolded Ash for misbehaving with a girl in a public space. After explaining the misunderstanding, Ash's dragon pal finally recovered from her illness. Ash again took his dragon pal for a walk and gave her the name Echo. After Ash gave a name to her, Echo's body as well as the Seikoku in Ash's arms glowed, indicating that their contract had been made and agreed to by both parties. After that, Echo went to the toilet but never came back. Ash, who was worried, guessed that Milgaus and Anya had kidnapped Echo. Sylvia then suggested that Ash use Astral Flow to find Echo's whereabouts. With Astral Flow, he can track the location of Echo's whereabouts, which turns out to be kidnapped by Angela Cornwell, an expert in the field of dragons. She is Professor Cornwell, referred to by Rebecca, who knows the ins and outs of dragons and wants to find out about Ash's dragon pal that has a human form instead of a dragon. Ash and Sylvia finally arrived at a castle where Echo was held and met Angela. Since Angela was about to perform surgery on Echo, Ash tried to stop her. But Angela first made Ash and his friends collapse unconscious with her power. Seeing Ash, who had fainted, Echo immediately screamed, which caused him to wake up again because they were still connected through Astral Flow. After successfully stopping Angela, Ash rushed to take Echo away from there. However, the next day at school, Ash is surprised by the appearance of Angela Cornwell at his school, where she will become his homeroom teacher at Ansarivan Academy and will continue to monitor Ash and Echo. Sylvia, with her dragon Lancelot, remembered her past when she met a boy in the forest who helped her. She then promised him that she would become a great archdragonar in the future, and until now, she has always been training hard to make it happen. Elsewhere, Rebecca seems to be persuading Ash to join the student council, but he looks uncomfortable with Rebecca's attitude, which pushes him a little. They are then startled by a commotion at the school caused by a raging dragon that has no master. Sylvia seemed to be riding the dragon and tried to stop it. Rebecca told Ash that Sylvia, as the crown princess of Lautreamont Kingdom, might be jealous of him because he can ride any dragon, even though he is not under a contract, which ability is not possessed by anyone else in the country except Ash. Rebecca then used her powers as an archdragonar to save Sylvia and calm the dragon. However, Sylvia thought of Rebecca as her rival instead. After that, Ash was seen walking in the city with Echo and accidentally ran into Rebecca and Sylvia. Rebecca then invited them to have lunch, which Echo immediately welcomed because Rebecca invited them to lunch at a fancy restaurant. On the other hand, Milgaus and Anya seemed to be in the town square, where Milgaus took out his flagship weapon and used his power to summon a necromancer dragon, a resurrected corpse of a dragon. Echo, who realized that, immediately got up and warned Ash that something bad would happen soon. Sure enough, not long after, a gigantic gray necromancer dragon appeared that was terrifying and began to destroy the city. The dragon then aimed for Echo and managed to catch her. Ash and his friends can't stay silent. Rebecca immediately summoned her dragon and used her power to fight the gigantic dragon. She managed to destroy the dragon's head, but unexpectedly, the dragon's head can grow back. Ash panicked because the necromancer dragon swallowed Echo alive, then asked Sylvia to summon Lancelot so he could ride and control Sylvia's dragon. Sylvia then complied with Ash's request to help Echo. Meanwhile, Echo is visited by Navi, the overseer of Dragon Workshop, and has access to all knowledge of past dragons. Navi then shows a situation where Ash and the others are fighting desperately to stop the necromancer dragon. As Ash's pal, Echo can create magical armor Ash can use in battle. After Echo used her power to make magical armor and weapons for Ash, Ash's appearance changed miraculously where he was now wearing silver armor. He then tried to ride the necromancer dragon and flew away from the town square. After feeling safe enough, Ash then uses his sword to kill the dragon and save Echo. For their success in defeating the necromancer dragon, Ash and his companions held a party to celebrate. Rebecca then asked Sylvia and Ash to join the student council, which they accepted. Sylvia recalled her past when she met the boy in the forest, where she was holding a stuffed dragon. On the other hand, Ash, who was in his room, accidentally found a stuffed dragon that looked familiar to him. Even so, he couldn't remember anything related to the stuffed dragon. The next day, a group of students appeared to enter Ash and Sylvia's class. They are the Silver Knight fan club chaired by a student named Jessica Valentine. Jessica's arrival there was to look for information about the Silver Knights who managed to annihilate the necromancer dragon that had messed up in the town square a while ago. Jessica and the fan club members then expressed their wish to bear the Silver Knights' children to gain nobility. Sylvia asked them to leave the class immediately, because it was considered to disturb the peace of learning. However, one of Jessica's friends told Jessica that Silvia was at the scene when the Silver Knight fought the dragon. Hearing this, Jessica asked Silvia to reveal the true identity of the Silver Knight, but she refused and instead got into an argument with her. Ash tried to mediate them, but Jessica insulted him instead. Not long after, Rebecca came there, approached Jessica, and whispered something to her. After that, Jessica's arrogance vanished, and she rushed away from there with great shame. Rebecca then told Ash and Silvia that Jessica was not an aristocrat like she used to talk about all this time. In fact, the Valentine family have been servants of the Randall family for generations, and Rebecca threatens to expose Jessica whenever she causes trouble. Even so, Jessica is actually a kind girl. After the fight against the Necromancer dragon, Rebecca and the others agreed to keep Ash's identity as the Silver Knight a secret to defeat the dragon. Only Silvia, Rebecca, Maximilian, and Raymond knew about it. After that, Rebecca informed about the planned arrival of Silvia's older sister, Veronica Lautreamont, at their school. Hearing that, Silvia suddenly felt frightened, as if she had a painful trauma related to Veronica. As a child, Silvia apparently underwent heavy dragon training, supervised directly by Veronica. Because Veronica cruelly trained her, Silvia became very frightened when she faced her sister, who was nicknamed the Iron Blood Valkyrie because of her prowess. Long story short, Veronica finally arrived, and everyone seemed to have been waiting for her in front of the school gate. Silvia, who seemed to have prepared herself, greeted her sister's arrival with great courage. However, when Veronica finally arrived at Ansarivan Academy, she instead swung her sword at Silvia as if she already knew that the one standing before her was not her younger sister. Everyone seemed surprised to know that Silvia's personal maid, Cosette, was disguised as Silvia. Not long after, Silvia finally came and rushed over to Veronica with her body trembling with fear. Veronica then humiliated her sister in front of everyone as punishment for arriving late to greet her. Ash, annoyed with Veronica's treatment of her sister, then tried to defend Silvia. But then, a man named Glenn Maguire drew his sword at Ash to stop him. Glenn is a knight who serves Veronica. Veronica, who seemed a little impressed with Ash, then asked Glenn to take him, where Ash then met Cosette's older sister, Primrose, who helped him prepare. After that, Veronica told Silvia and others that she had arranged Silvia's marriage to Glenn, which was about to occur. The marriage must be held immediately, because at this time, the Lautreamont family's lineage was cut off after their one and only brother, Julius, was executed for killing his dragon pal. However, Silvia immediately rejected her sister's wish because she had a dream to become an Arch-Dragonar with Lancelot. But Veronica instead mocks Silvia's dream and challenges Silvia to prove her worth in a fight at the welcoming event, to which she agrees. Silvia turned out to have to face Rebecca in the fight. Even though the difference in their strength was quite large, Silvia did not give up and put all her strength into facing Rebecca. However, Silvia still lost and fell from her dragon until she fainted in the end. Ash then accompanied Silvia until her condition recovered and calmed her down. Not long after, Glenn came to see Silvia and told her that Veronica was very disappointed in Silvia and asked her to reflect on her mistakes in the church. Meanwhile, in another place, Rebecca warns the student council members about a woman named Avdocia, who is a fugitive in the Lautreamont kingdom for being involved in acts of terrorism. At the same time, Silvia, who was praying at the local church, met Jessica, who was praying for the Silver Knight to get her pregnant. Hearing this, Silvia's face suddenly turned red, and she advised Jessica not to make such an indecent request. During their conversation, suddenly Avdocia appeared, who barged in from the church's roof and took everyone in the church hostage. After that, Avdocia contacted Veronica and showed that she held everyone in the church hostage with a powerful explosive bomb that could destroy anything. Meanwhile, Jessica tries to protect Silvia by volunteering to be the main hostage because she doesn't want to endanger the safety of Silvia, who is a crown princess. To deal with this precarious situation, Veronica then orders Ash to be the negotiator to distract Avdocia, while Glenn and the Arch-Dragonar will infiltrate the church. Ash agreed to the mission and asked Echo to make a suitable arc for him. When Ash is finally brought into the church to negotiate with Avdocia, one of the hostages appears terrified as her baby cries and makes Avdocia angry. She then intends to make the woman and her baby pray for Avdocia's dragon. But then, Silvia rose to protect them while revealing her true identity. Knowing that Silvia is the crown princess, Avdocia then humiliates her in front of everyone. At first, Silvia seemed frustrated and down. But she remembers her past and the moments when she tried so hard to achieve her dreams. She then decided to get up and fight Avdocia so that she would no longer be humiliated and underestimated by her sister. Silvia even confirmed her determined desire to become the paladin who would inherit the throne of her father, the king of the Lautreamont kingdom. Hearing this, Avdocha got even more excited and wanted to attack Silvia. However, Avdocha's attack was from underground. Meanwhile, Ash, who had obtained Arc from Echo, then froze Avdocha and her dragon with his weapon, finally resolving the problem. Ash then encouraged Silvia, who was sitting pensively at the church altar. He offered to carry her back to the academy because she still looked shocked by the incident. That night, Ash was surprised by the appearance of Jessica in his room, who seemed to be crazy about him because he managed to beat Avdocha. Jessica seems to know Ash's identity as the Silver Knight. However, Echo, who noticed Jessica's presence, kicked her out of Ash's room. Because of this incident, Rebecca intends to make Jessica the student council member so that she can monitor Jessica's movements that might leak information about the Silver Knight. After that, Veronica held a meeting with the people involved in the hostage incident at the church, including Avdocha, who turned out to be Veronica's servant. Veronica assigned Avdocha to trap Silvia in a dangerous situation just to fix Silvia, so Veronica really believes that her sister will become the great paladin in the future. Even though Silvia didn't meet all the qualifications needed to become the paladin, Veronica was the only person who believed that her sister would become a better leader than their own father. Veronica actually really cares and loves her sister more than anything. It is proven by Veronica's worship, which is named Sylvanus, which is another version of Silvia's name. After knowing that, Silvia was no longer afraid of her sister and felt grateful because she had a great sister. On the other hand, Avdocha reveals to Ash and his companions that she is looking for her younger sister named Samara, who disappeared some time ago. One night, Echo had a bad dream that caused her to sweat and wet the bed. When she wanted to tell Ash her dream, he instead mocked her for wetting the bed. Sometime later, Rebecca invites Ash and his companions to meet a girl named Luca Sarinane, the student council secretary who is an Ekbald or elf of the forest. Luca is the youngest person to ever become a Dragonar, and her dragon pal is a maestro dragon named Gawain. However, Gawain has recently avoided Luca, even breaking astral flow between them, so she doesn't know what really happened to her dragon pal. Knowing this, Ash intends to help Luca so that she can reconcile with her dragon pal. Rebecca then suggests that Ash try to ride Gawain to find out how the dragon feels. After getting permission from Luca, Ash turns into a Silver Knight and tries to ride Gawain. But Gawain doesn't want to be ridden by anyone and attacks Ash until he collapses unconscious. After that, Ash visits Luca and proposes that she attend a training camp to resolve her problems with Gawain. She seemed to agree with the idea and decided to go to the dragon training camp with Ash and Echo. Elsewhere, Anya apparently managed to infiltrate Ansarivan Academy and disguised herself as one of the maids to spy on Ash. She then reports to Milgaus about the dragon training camp. He seems excited because the training camp location is very close to the Willingham Mausoleum, where he can awaken the dragons to attack them. Long story short, Ash and his schoolmates finally arrived at the training camp, where Anya was there and served as a staff. Everyone, including Rebecca and Silvia, seemed to be having fun before the training started. But not so with Ash, who seemed to be worried about something. In the evening, Ash secretly follows Luca, who sneaks out to meet Gawain. She tried to make up with Gawain, but the dragon again roared loudly as if it didn't want to be approached by her. Ash tries to help Luca, but Gawain attacks him instead. He then recklessly rode on Gawain, but he was thrown down and passed out. On the other hand, Anya turns out to be spying on Ash from the top of the hill and meets Luca, where Anya tells her that she will help Ash. Meanwhile, Ash then wakes up but finds that he is in another world because he meets Navi, holding Gawain in the form of a baby dragon. She then translates Gawain's words stating that it only wants to be ridden by Luca. Gawain then told about the incident that caused Luca to fall while riding it. After that incident, Gawain realized that Luca was afraid to ride the dragon again and made it worry about Luca's safety, so Gawain refused to be ridden. But on the other hand, it severed the astral flow between them, which would endanger Gawain's life instead. Navi then reveals to Ash that Gawain only hopes to live for 5 days because if a dragon breaks astral flow with its rider, then the dragon will slowly die. She then asks him to help Luca solve her problem to save Gawain. Before Ash returned to his world, Navi said goodbye to him while referring to him as the Knight of Avalon. Ash woke up and realized that he was in his room with Luca, who was by his side. He then told her about Gawain, which then made her realize. The scene then switches and shows Angela Cornwell finding a secret room under the Willingham Mausoleum and an ancient magic book. Not long after, Angela was surprised by the appearance of Milgaus and Anya at the venue, where she realized Milgaus' resemblance to Julius Lautreamont, the crown prince who was executed for killing his dragon pal. Angela was about to attack Milgos, but Anya knocked her down unconscious. After that, Milgos seemed to be preparing to resurrect the necromantia dragons buried there. At the same time, Luca informs Ash that Gawain has disappeared somewhere, so they rush to find Gawain's whereabouts at the Willingham Mausoleum. Luca thought Gawain would follow in Nuada's footsteps, a legendary dragon that believed his master was about to die and cut off his astral flow with her. Nuada left for the Willingham Mausoleum, where he died alone, not realizing his master had recovered. Ash and his companion then searched for Gawain's whereabouts by riding Lancelot. Meanwhile, Rebecca and the students in the training camp were surprised by the appearance of the necromantia dragons approaching them. Rebecca led the students to prepare for the real battle in front of their eyes. Turning back to Ash and his companions, they finally meet Milgos at the Willingham Mausoleum. Ash then asked Echo to make a proper arc for the fight against Milgos. Echo immediately turned to the other world and asked Navi for help to make the suitable arc for Ash. On the other hand, Silvia, who was there, noticed Milgos' resemblance to her brother Julius. On the other hand, Milgos then resurrected the legendary dragon, Nuada, to attack them. Ash and Silvia were immediately pressed, especially after Echo was caught. But then, she got back up and managed to defeat several necromantia dragons before finally giving the arc to Ash, which gave him the ability to take on Milgos. Ash and Milgos engage in a fierce battle, which ends in the defeat of Nuada and Milgos, who decides to run away from the battle. After that, Luca, who was at the edge of the cliff, suddenly grabbed Ash's arm and jumped off the cliff, where she asked Gawain for help with all her heart. Unexpectedly, Gawain heard the request and rushed over to help Luca. Elsewhere, Rebecca and the students seemed to be on the edge of being surrounded by the necromantia army. But then, Luca came with Gawain and performed the dragon dance, a battle style from Ickbaldian Dragonar, which was claimed to be very great and was able to destroy the necromantia dragons with one hit. After all the zombie dragons were defeated, Rebecca and the others celebrated their victory. A few days later, Silvia received a letter from her father asking her to attend the Intercontinental Congress, which would be held at the palace. In the letter, Silvia's father, Oswald Lautreamont, asks her to take Ash and Echo with her to the palace in Fontaine City. Ash seemed reluctant to go there, but he had no choice. Long story short, Silvia and her companions finally arrived, where they were reunited with Primrose, Veronica's personal maid. She escorted Ash and Echo to rest in their room while Silvia met her father. After meeting her father, Silvia said about Milgos, who was very similar to Julius. But Oswald insisted that Julius was dead, even though his face showed that he was hiding something. In the evening, Ash and Echo decided to take a walk in Fontaine City with Primrose, who occasionally talked about the history of the Lautreamont kingdom before attending the Congress with Silvia. They saw several ships from other countries arriving, indicating that the Congress was about to start. After that, Ash and Echo headed to the palace and met Silvia, who looked beautiful and graceful, which fascinated Ash. They then met the paladin, who warmly welcomed their arrival. The paladins then crowned Ash as the Dragon Knight. During dinner, Silvia asked about the Emperor of the Zephyros Kingdom, who didn't come to attend the Intercontinental Congress. Oswald said the Emperor was too old to travel far and had sent his representatives to attend the Congress. Elsewhere, Milgos and Anya were seen having a serious conversation with Klaus Wiederhausen, a nobleman who was sent to represent the Zephyros Empire in the Continental Congress. Klaus and Milgos apparently plan to kidnap Echo and make her an experimental subject because she is a special and rare dragon pal. Meanwhile, Silvia finally realized that the necromantia dragon attacking them in the town square was Mordred, Julius' dragon pal. She then rushed to Veronica and Glenn and told them about Milgos, who looked much like Julius. Hearing this, Glenn was very surprised and thought Silvia was just making it up. Veronica then asked her sister not to say anything. While in the palace, Echo apparently felt jealous of Ash and Silvia's closeness, so she tried to beat Silvia in every way to get Ash's full attention. Meanwhile, Silvia seems to be telling her anxiety about the appearance of Milgos, and her father, who seems to be lying about Julius' execution. Ash then comforted Silvia by telling her about her family and suggested she ask Milgos directly if they met again. The scene then switches and shows Echo running in the rain, trying to find a place to take shelter. Echo found an abandoned building, where she saw Primrose was dealing with several intruders who entered there. But they were both kidnapped by the intruders. The Intercontinental Congress was finally officially convened. Guests flocked to the palace, including Klaus Wiederhausen, who has Milgos as his bodyguard. Ash and Silvia danced together at the dance party before Klaus finally approached them and asked Silvia to dance with him. However, Silvia rejected Klaus because she wanted to dance with Milgos. Cosette noticed that Echo had disappeared and then tried to find Echo's whereabouts, but she only found Primrose lying helpless. Echo turned out to have been kidnapped by Anya and was about to be the subject of an experiment. Echo was then put into a giant machine, where the machine would make her feel a lot of pain so that it would reveal her true form. Anya and the kidnappers then maximized the power of the machine, which caused Echo so much pain that she finally gave up and released the power that had been hidden within her, which then destroyed the machine. After that, Echo turned into a giant golden egg with the Seikoku sculpted on all sides. Elsewhere, Ash's Seikoku caught fire, so Ash and Silvia rushed to find Echo. However, suddenly they couldn't control Lancelot, nor did Arc Dragonars because the dragons flocked to the giant golden egg. Not long after, the giant golden egg hatched, and a giant dragon finally appeared. The dragon was much larger than the average dragon, so Lancelot and the other dragons bowed. However, Ash immediately realized that the giant dragon was Echo's true form. Meanwhile, at the palace, Veronica and Glenn rushed to secure the guests from the raging giant dragons and the dragon pals that disobey their riders. Klaus, who had planned all of this, then instigated the guests and tried to stir things up so that the Lautreamont kingdom was viewed badly by the representatives from other countries. Veronica and Glenn then confront Milgauss, who reveals that he is indeed Julius, but his body is now controlled by Mordred, his dragon pal. In the past, as his dragon grew older, Julius discovered that Mordred had a malevolent aspect to his personality that was born from his ancestral memory as a descendant of the Dark Kingdom of Nihilania, and that it was slowly taking him over. To that end, Mordred conspired with the prince to kill himself, hoping that it would kill his evil side. Unfortunately, Mordred's evil side was able to escape the death of its body and possess Julius. When the paladin spared Julius's life, he unwittingly allowed Mordred to survive. Upon knowing that, Glenn tries to attack Mordred but fails. Mordred later tries to possess Echo to fully revive himself and leaves Julius' body. On the other hand, Veronica was trapped in Mordred's black mist and finally managed to be saved by Julius, who has now returned to being himself. Mordred finally meets Navi and persuades her to form an alliance with him so that Mordred can become the ruler of the dragons and the ruler of the demon world. But she denies Mordred's offer and reveals that she is the incarnation of the Dragways, the repository of all dragon knowledge. Meanwhile, Julius meets Ash and offers to help him save Echo and defeat Mordred. Julius then borrows Veronica's warship and takes Ash away with him. Ash asked why Veronica was willing to lend Sylvanus to them. Julius says that Veronica really idolizes Silvia, and he uses this to threaten Veronica. On the other hand, Arc Dragonars, who managed to regain control of their dragons, tried to stop Mordred. Julius tried to attack Mordred, but the attack was successfully repelled. Mordred then launches a counterattack that forces Ash to freefall from the plane as Julius loses control of Sylvanus until it crashes and explodes. Ash tries to ride Mordred but fails. Meanwhile, Echo's soul, which is confined in a cage, is met by Navi, who shows Ash and the others struggle to fight Mordred. With Navi's strength and guidance, Echo prepares to give Arc to Ash so she can help him in the fight against Mordred. When Ash fell from a height, suddenly Luca came and immediately saved him. Not only Luca, who came with Gawain, but all of Ash's friends came to help Ash defeat Mordred. Silvia and Lancelot teamed up with Rebecca to take on Mordred, but their attacks can be broken. Ash then attempts to ride Mordred but gets hit by the dragon's attack. Luckily, Echo gave Arc to Ash at the right time, so he could withstand the attack. After that, Ash took out the Excalibur sword and immediately cut off one of Mordred's horns, which then dispelled the black mist and Mordred's influence on Echo. Ash rushed to save Echo, who had turned back into human form, taking her away. Meanwhile, at the palace, Anya is caught by the royal soldiers. However, Avdotia, who was about to put her on trial, immediately recognized Anya as Samara, her long-lost younger sister. After that, Julius tells Ash and his companions that Mordred's spirit flees and is last seen flying to the east, and the Intercontinental Congress is cancelled. While alone in the room, Ash apologized to Echo because Echo's horn was slightly scratched in the incident. She didn't seem to mind it and instead felt very relieved that he had survived. With happy tears in her eyes, Echo then confesses her love for Ash, which he accepts, and they kiss. The moral that can be learned from this anime is that friendship is one of the most important things, because true friends will always support us and will not let us fall into something that will harm ourselves and others.